All right, everybody, welcome to the newest edition of Source Gaming's Smash for Switch series. Today we'll be talking about giant stages in Smash Brothers, and will they be coming back for Smash on the Switch? Of course, these are stages larger than average. I'd say anything that would be Hyrule Temple or bigger. With us today to talk about why he thinks that they will come back, we have Source Gaming video lead, Nantendo. Say hi, Nantendo.
Hey, everybody.
And for the against argument, thinking that these stages won't be on the Switch, we have SmashChu, who is one of our senior contributors.
Hello, folks.
All right, I like to start with a little positive slant. So let's start with Nintendo. Why do you think that we will have giant stages in Smash for Switch?
Well, I think the first point is that there's no real reason to remove the big stages. I mean, if it's just going to be like a port of the Wii U version, or at least based on the Wii U version, there's very little reason to cut something, and assuming that the Switch is going to be more powerful than the Wii U version. Like, the Switch is more powerful than the Wii U, even when it's on its handheld form. So it's not like the stages can't run from a technical standpoint. Like, I think that's the first point to go on there. So it's not like the 3DS, where the 3DS may have been too small to have all those details put in, of stuff like Palutena's Temple and the Great Cave Offensive. So, I mean, that's the first point I was going to make.
All right, what about you, SmashChu?
So I kind of start from a different perspective, right? Because I think you're saying that Wii U will kind of be the base version. That it's like, okay, of course this isn't here, so let's do this. I'm thinking kind of reverse. So essentially, I'm thinking, could this game, Super Smash Wii U, work on the Nintendo Switch? And I don't think it works in this regard, because the issue you have is with a lot of these larger stages is you do have a smaller screen. Because this is the Nintendo Switch is weird. It's a hybrid console. So yeah, you attach this to the TV, but it very much is also played like a handheld. And in the reveal trailer, they basically made it seem like a big feature of this is using the handheld as its own screen. So you saw people playing Mario Kart on it. You saw them playing basketball on it instead of real basketball. It was very much intended to be a small screen. And the problem Super Smash Bros. Has is, unlike other games like Mario Kart, where you can kind of solve this issue through a LAN with split screen, is that Super Smash Bros. Always zooms, and it always kind of tries to capture the full perspective. And if you were to say, as an example, look at, let's say, you take your gamepad and you look at the stage as you go to Palutena's Temple. Well, already when you do the starting point, like, it's already very large. I think the starting points are from the small little cove on the left, like the little small little shrine, to the far right platform. That's a pretty big distance, and that stage is gigantic. So trying to play it on a handheld would be very difficult. And the problem is, unlike I think the Wii U, where you kind of always have the system tethered to a TV, the problem with the Nintendo Switch is that you kind of always have to assume that somebody is going to use it as a handheld, because that's a big feature of it. And that's, if you look at the trailer, they only really showed the TV like 3 or 4 times, and it's always either something going away from it and something coming to it. Only time they ever showed it independently was when they showed it as a handheld, and many of the scenes I kind of mentioned. So it seems like Nintendo has a clear intent that this is meant to be that's a console that you can take on the go. So I think with the big stages, that's where it creates a problem. And trying to bring them back, mostly, not for all of them. Obviously, something like Big Battlefield still pretty much works. Hyrule's Temple can maybe work, but things like Great Cave Offensive and Palutena's Temple definitely will not work because they're super big.
One thing I'd personally like to point out is I used to own a little 5.6 LCD monitor that you put on your GameCube, and it would fold up, and it would essentially make your GameCube a portable.
Okay.
Exactly, that exists. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, like it would fit on top, and you'd fold it down, and then you could fold it back up, and all you would need is a power source, because it actually also, I think the power somehow hooked up into the GameCube as well. So as long as you had something to plug the GameCube into, you were good. And I actually had a cigarette, like a car adapter for it, so I could take it on trips and stuff. And I did actually play Hyrule Temple on a 5.6-inch screen, not in HD, not in the greatest resolution, because this was, back in the GameCube days, with 4 other people at one point. So it's something that can be done. It wasn't the best, but we still had fun. And interestingly enough, I would actually argue that a brand new Smash for Switch, I think, would be more likely to have large stages, because then we don't know how the system functions separately. Because if somebody still wants to play, let's say, Palutena's Temple on the go, they could, but if it's a brand new game, they could set up parameters. Like, for instance, larger stages don't come up on the random feature in when you're playing for fun. or they come up with much less frequency. They could do things like that when it's not docked, because we literally don't know how the Switch is going to function. So it should be interesting. What do you think, Nintendo, as far as the limit? Do you think that there's any limit, or do you think all of the large stages are going to be back? Is it like an all or nothing thing for you?
Well, no. I mean, I personally think that they're not going to be cutting any of the big stages. I mean, it's not an all or nothing. I mean, I'm not going to complain if they cut stuff like Palutena's Temple or Great Cave Offensive, because I don't actually think they're that great stages. But I don't think they are going to make the point of cutting it, because I want to go back to something SmashChu said before about how in the trailer it looked like the emphasis and stuff was taken on the go, and so, but I don't think that's like the prime focus. Of course, that's what they wanted to show on the system, because that's what they're trying to show, that you can take things on the go, like you can take this system away from you now, like. That's the Switch's main focus at the moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what Nintendo wants everyone to be doing all the time. It doesn't mean they're going to be basing all of their games around the fact that it's a portable, especially as they market it in all of their writing as a home console. They say, like, this is Nintendo's next home console. And when you're basing it around that, I think that limiting the game just so it can work on the... Not so that it can't work, because big stages could work on the portable. We see that they did it on the gamepad. It's just not as good on the gamepad. But I think removing them entirely just because of that is a bad decision, and I don't think they're going to do that. I think they'd keep them on there. If people don't want to play them on the go, then they just don't have to play them on the go. They can just play them on the big screen instead. So that's how I see this happening.
All right, so one thing I will say is that it's hard to say what Nintendo's real purpose is, because I think what they're doing a lot is they're doing something similar to the DS. They claimed the DS was a third pillar, until it wasn't. Until it was, oh no, this is really the successor to the Game Boy Advance. The hard part for Nintendo right now, just as a side looking at business perspective, is this would be their only system if they're kind of going this route. It seems they're talking about there might be a 3DS successor. They're saying, oh no, this is a home console. But from how it looks and how they're promoting it, it looks like this may be a situation where, similar to the Nintendo DS, where they're saying, oh, they don't want to kill off the DS. They don't want to say, oh yeah, this is a handle, don't buy our 3DS. And they're still I think continuing supporting the 3DS through 2018. I know they just had a direct, I think today or yesterday, about a new game, Miitopia. So at least they're still continuing to do this, and they did a little bit of that with the Game Boy Advance. So I think a lot of them saying, well, this is a home console, is they don't want to shoehorn themselves and say this is a home console, or I'm saying this is a handheld, and then the plan doesn't work out, and they really don't have anything to fall back on. So I think a lot of the current what Nintendo's been saying has a lot to do just with a forward-looking strategy and saying, if this doesn't work, what's plan B? And plan B is basically kind of doing what they've been doing before. On the fact that kind of dock versus the system, one of the problems, even though you could have these stages and you could wear the dock, it's hard because you're kind of saying that this content is detrimental when you're on the go, because and I did have some
online was a big part of Smash 4, and they were saying these stages are detrimental when you're online.
That is kind of true too.
Yeah.
That is true, but I think the issue with this is that Smash has always been about local multiplayer. So in local multiplayer, those stages work fine. I mean, I'm kind of with Nintendo. I'm not a huge fan of those stages. Funny enough, in general, but they kind of work for you. Have the tether to a TV, and TVs nowadays are pretty decent size that you could probably play on most of these stages without too much of a hiccup. You probably don't have to do on you said a 5-screen TV, that's
yeah.
That's I used to have one too, a small TV like that. And even then, back then, they've gotten really big. You compare a Hyrule Temple to say Palutena's Temple, it's not even comparable. It's 3 or 4 of those. This is how big some of these stages are. So it's hard when you're having a system that's specifically designed to where it can be independent and it can have its own screen, and you have these stages. Even though you can play them in the dock and you can use them when you're on the TV, it just becomes, I think, difficult to try and also include them on there. And I don't think, as a side, I think the idea is, they'll just cut them and nothing be replaced. I do think that, regardless of what they do, if they do say, okay, we're going to cut them, these don't work too well, they'd replace it with something else rather than just saying, there's no content here. Don't look at this. Don't look at these empty gaps we've left in the stage roster.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting way to look at this is that although this very well could be Nintendo hedging their bets. It would still have to take the place of both the home console and the portable. So it would be odd for them not to try to give you the full experience of both, because it's still not primarily a handheld. It's primarily both is what they want it to be. Now I know they don't want to cut functionality when it's in one of its modes, and I understand that, which is why I don't think they would actually cut the stages themselves. But I could see things changing in that way. Do you have any other thoughts on this, Nintendo?
Well, so going back to like what we've been saying with what Nintendo's focus is with this, if we look back at Smash for Wii U and Smash for 3DS, the Sakurai had clear intentions for what each version would be. So for Smash for 3DS, it was the personal version of the game, which is why it had a lot of focus on single player and had stages that would work with everyone having their own screen. Whereas the Wii U version was the stadium version, and this is why you had big stages that could big stages and lots of stages where everyone was on the same screen and everyone could sit around one TV and play together. And the focus, what we have to think about is, what is the focus for Smash for Switch? Is it going to be the replacement to one of these two? Is it going to be some strange in-between? So if it is based on Smash for Wii U, then I feel like they're marketing it more as the replacement system. But if, like you're saying now, Spazzy, that if it's on the go, will it function differently? Could it take elements from both of them? Could it be that when it's on the go, it's more personal and the screen and the stuff adapts to it? Everyone has their own unique screen when it's on the go, unless you're using the Joy-Cons. But there's, again, that's opening up another argument altogether there. But everyone could have their own screen when it's portable, and then you could potentially do so. If you're talking about the zoom and all that, they could make it so that the zoom only goes out to a set thing on certain stages, because that was a feature in older games when you're going against CPUs at the very least. You could alter the zoom in games like Melee and Brawl, and you might be able to do it in Smash for Wii U as well, I just haven't tested it out, so that it doesn't go the full stage length when you're against CPUs. And it doesn't matter when you're against CPUs, because for them, they don't need to see where they're going. But if everyone has their own screen, then it could individually do it for everyone, and that would solve that issue. Whereas when you put it on the big screen, then it does the whole zoom out thing, and that's fine because you're on the big screen, so you can see these big stages perfectly clearly. And I think it's features like that mean that there are ways that, even if it isn't as convenient playing it on the small screen, they can still work around it when it's on the portable, and then they don't have to cut it and lessen the experience of the big screen version.
Right. I think if there is a Smash game that is a port, and I mean that's a completely separate discussion whether or not a Smash port will happen. We talked about whether it would be enhanced previously, but it would have to be at least heavily modified, because the UI from the Wii U or the 3DS version really wouldn't work for Switch because of the nature of it. Can you imagine the exact same character select screen with the blocks on the bottom and everything if you were using it just on the screen? I mean, you can. Obviously, you can go look at things like that on your Wii U, but it's just a lot less convenient. So I do think that in the case of it being a port, I'm leaning towards no-cut content, but it would have to. I feel like everything would have to be heavily modified in one way or another, to the point of us wondering when does a port stop being a port? Once again, another
it's like a philosophical debate now. It's like,
yeah.
When does a port
right?
not a port? Just to kind of add something, I think Spazzy said, you're mentioning about adjusting the stages zooms. I even might go one step further, because if you look at Gar Plains, it's in both versions, but in the 3DS version, it's specifically smaller than it is in the Wii U version. Where the Wii U version is it's probably just about as big as like Hyrule Temple or one of those kind of stages. It would fall in the same category, even though sometimes we forget about it. So that's something they could do as well, is just adjust the stages so the size is comparable for either version, while still allowing for what their intended purpose is for 8-player Smash. So essentially, you just have smaller versions of the same stages, but they probably would still be small, like a bit larger than they would be on the 3DS, obviously, because the screen will be bigger than the 3DS version. The resolution will be big, which does help a little bit. So that's a potential possibility too, if you're saying this is a complete port, that they could do this. One aside as well, and you mentioned kind of the UI. One thing that there is going to have to be some changes to the Wii U version, because there are some smaller features that only work with the gamepad, such as the stage builder and painting images and the trophy stuff. A lot of that was done because you had the gamepad and you could draw on it, but when the system is docked, you obviously don't have that capability because the screen is in the system. So even though it could have a touchscreen, there's some rumors that point to that it may not. So that's one I think also muddies the water a little bit in this debate. Is we say there's some changes that may have to happen. It's just again goes with that debate. It's like, is this a port? Is it not a port? Where are we going to go with this? So that's just a thought.
Right, and some people said that the Joy-Cons actually have motion controls and can be used to replicate some of the UI elements that a touchscreen would have. But that sounds, it's actually not something I doubt, but it sounds very messy just in practice, which I think it was a smart idea for Nintendo to not focus on those things in the Switch reveal, because you get a clean message out there. Yeah. So here's another question. In regards to larger stages, do you think 8-player Smash is dependent on this? Do you think if the large stages do not come back, we won't have 8-player Smash? What do you think about 8-player Smash on the Switch? We'll start with SmashChu.
So, and actually, I think Nintendo made this argument before. It's kind of weird because the larger stages exist for 8-player Smash. Because if you even watch the 55 Direct, they pretty much introduce 8-player Smash, and they say, oh, well, this would kind of suck if we didn't have bigger stages. That's not exactly how they said it, but it's basically kind of how the flow went. So the bigger stages are almost to accommodate 8-player Smash. Now, I think what Nintendo's point, I'm getting a little ahead, is that there are stages, smaller stages, that work with 8-player Smash, such as Battlefield, and some of the other stages as well, like Suzuka Castle, I probably said that wrong, the Street Fighter stage, and Yoshi's Island. For some reason, that stage has to have 8-player Smash. And of course, processing-wise, there's been least images of, like, say, the boxing ring having 8-player Smash, or at least, like, more for 4 players in some of the Nintendo screenshots they've released. It doesn't have in the main game, but it's a possibility that that may just have been a processing issue, which obviously the Switch is stronger, so it could fix that issue. So, I would say, so yeah, there's an argument I think that can be made for, yes, we could still do 8-player Smash. I would think that they may stray away from it, not just because obviously some of the stages that accommodate it are gone, but it may also be just a different philosophy for a Nintendo Switch version, just because I'm thinking, and as background, I'm thinking not so much just, here's Wii U game on the Switch. I'm thinking they would do it as an extra, like a game that builds upon the Wii U game. So thus it could be different.
Well, see, so for me, I think 8-player Smash is a feature that is way too important now to Smash for it to ever be cut. I said this during the discussion I had about the Ice Climbers with Push and Omni, but even if the Ice Climbers work on the Switch but don't work because of 8-player Smash, then the 8-player Smash will get the priority over them. I think that's a thing that he's been trying to implement since Melee, and he's done it now, and they had to make very, serious workarounds, like cutting bones out of certain characters and stuff, and making some stages just not have hazards, like Mario Circuit Brawl, there's no Shy Guys, and Wii Fit Studio, there's no background mirror. But they did it to try and get 8-player Smash to work, and people love that feature. When you're having a big party, 8 people can play. It's no longer so many people sitting around and waiting, and unless you're playing super competitively, in which case you're probably playing 1v1 anyway, no one minds playing 8-player. And I think to remove that for the Switch version would be it wouldn't be the right idea. Even if I've seen the argument that that also might not work on the go because the screen's too small and it's harder to see everything around. But I think I don't think that's a good enough reason to be cutting a feature like this. I think that with the more power that the Switch will have, 8-player Smash will run a lot better, to the point where you might not even need to cut skeletons out of people and change stages. But even if it's not worth, it's still not that enjoyable on the go. The fact it will be so much more enjoyable on the big screen that they can't cut it.
Right. I think the interesting thing to think about here is how much of that is Sakurai's vision just for Smash in general. Because you did bring up that he wanted to implement 8 players since Melee, and he cut. He tried very hard to get this in. You can tell there were a lot of things that had to be accommodated. So is that, and if this is Sakurai's vision, is that part of his overall vision for it? And because if it is, he'll work it through again. So that's an interesting way to look at it. Once again, going towards port versus a game that was more built from the ground up, I could see personally just having maybe the action zoom in mostly on your character and have a zoom button to zoom out to the full size. And other things like that, like for instance, the outline on the 3DS versions, the colored outlines, you can't do that on the Wii U. But something like that would also maybe help it out. So there's things that can be done. It's just more difficult if this is going to be a straight port. So yeah, that is one way to look at it. All right, do we have any more thoughts here, SmashChu?
So yeah, I guess I'll just wrap up with this thought. I think a lot of it comes to some of our differences of thought, because I think a lot of similar things we kind of agree on. And just on something you said, like I don't think a processing power wouldn't be the issue. I think they can easily do ice climbers on this system because this is going to be much stronger than the Wii U is. And I think even if you say, well, people getting around this isn't going to be a problem, well, that's where you can have multiple switches come in, because that's essentially just land, even if this display is the same. I think it's more, my thought is, that where they're going to come from would not be, well, let's just make the Wii U game, put it on the Switch. I think it would be, let's make the third game, because in a lot of ways the Switch is different than the Wii U, so it kind of has to be built from the ground up. And my thinking is on just 8-player Smash in general, I think it's not like an all or nothing kind of thing, right? In a sense, like it's a deal breaker, really, I should say. That I think that if you're looking at a system where 4-player is the core of Super Smash Bros., and I think even in the 50 Factor Direct, they called it a special mode. They said, oh, you can only do some stages, you can't do it online. So it was kind of a feature they always wanted, but I think it's always still kind of a special feature, and it may be looked at saying, well, this system is better built for like 4-player or even 2-player, because you always have 2 controllers with the Nintendo Switch. It's a console on the go. So that may be where they, focus a lot when developing this game, without still, totally saying, let's just throw everything out we've already did and, build a brand new game from the ground up. So I think a lot of my thinking comes from the fact I'm thinking, okay, well, this has some things that may not work well for the Nintendo Switch. So it's kind of like taking the same concept they already did and building upon it for the system, rather than saying, let's take the Wii U version and just say, okay, this is the Super Smash Bros. On the Switch. It's the Wii U version plus extra stuff. So I think it's a difference of ideology, but maybe you disagree with that, Nintendo.
See, I feel like we've seen them from the footage and stuff like that for the Switch, stuff like the Mario Kart, which looks like it could be a port. I mean, we don't know until they say it officially. Splatoon as well. I feel like that. I don't think it's going to be a third pillar, because I think that both Wii U and the 3DS versions of Smash cover both bases already. So I think this would be. I feel like the Switch version, the focus is going to be to replace one of those two, and the Stadium version is the version that I think is the bigger one, the more popular one, the one that everyone has, because Smash is like a party game, a fighting game, a multiplayer focused game. And adding on to that, I feel like the Smash for Wii U is the worst selling Smash in the series, and part of that is because of the fact that the Wii U just didn't sell very well. And we're seeing with a lot of them, like porting stuff to 3DS and potentially porting stuff to Switch, they're going to try and salvage as much stuff as they'd already done. So rather than start straight from the beginning again, making a new Smash and bringing stuff over, it's easier to start with Smash for Wii U as a basis and build upon it to make something different. I mean, they can change up things to make it different enough. I'm not saying it's going to be like a straight port with a couple of extra things added on top, but I don't think that they would go about removing anything for the sake of just removing anything if it already all works on the Switch. I feel like any cut content we've had in the past has mainly been due to either time or a priority, or having so not every stage comes back, but that's because they don't port every stage over. They only port over the select fews. But this time around, it's so easy to port everything over. It's so easy that they already have the game running, and so it's just a matter of adding stuff on top.
Good thoughts. I personally think that if this is a port of the Wii U version, they're not going to cut content. However, I feel like large stages only work with modifications that would come from building something almost from the ground up. So it's interesting. And I do kind of feel like this might just be a very heavily modified port, and that once again, gets us to the philosophical point of when does a port stop being a port? But that is a rambling discussion for another day. All right, so we got our final thoughts out. Good discussion, guys. We'll leave it out to the folks in the comments to discuss who you think won. So let us know what your thoughts on this subject are. As always, you can find all of us over at sourcegaming.info or at Alt Source Gaming Twitter, Source Gaming YouTube, Nintendo. Where in particular can people find you?
Well, my Twitter is at Mr. Nintendo. Yeah, that's basically just there. Apart from Source Gaming and the YouTube, where I tend to put out a bunch of videos and articles, and the Sourcecasts, which I tend to be a part of most of them. So make sure you listen to them. You can find them on iTunes.
All right, what about you, SmashChu?
You can find me at Spoochie Monkey. Of course, you can always see all my stuff at Source Gaming. I'm also doing another blog, some of my own crazy thoughts called Antithesis Analysis, which if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get to see as well. And hopefully going to be doing more stuff in the future. But otherwise, of course, just stay tuned to Source Gaming, follow us, and there's a lot more awesome things to come, especially if Smash Switch does happen.
All right, and once again, I am David Spazzy Crane. You can follow me on Twitter at 8bit_Spazzy, and follow me on Source Gaming for all of our updates. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this discussion. Let us know what you think. Bye.
Bye.